in the U.S., there's the Navy SEALs, right? The Navy SEALs is one of the elite military divisions.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah,
All right.
yeah.
Well, in Denmark, they have a group called the Frogmen, which is the equivalent of the Navy SEAls.
I think,
And
yeah, I think I heard that one.
yeah, so he's Alice is the second youngest frogman in Denmark.
Oh, wow.
And if he could have, he would have been the first, but I guess he wasn't allowed, and I guess he entered the very moment he was allowed to. But he's a martial artist. He teaches my wife actually Wing Chun, and she comes home every day or every class with new bruises and new cuts on her arms. And,
Oh, wow.
so
Well, I mean,
so, I gotta tell you this. We go to this my son's school, kind of like when they do the teacher student conference, and she's sitting there talking and she's waving her hand around, and all I could think in the back of my mind is, man, I hope they don't think I abuse my wife.
think that I
Yep.
beat her up or something.
yeah, people might report you guys. I don't know that, but that is very serious over there. So
So yeah. I actually I stayed up all night following the U.S. election.
yeah.
So if I
When
simulate
is the result coming? Like when is it? It's gonna be like final. Is that
Well-
like today, sometime today, or?
Well, actually, no. I mean, there's no final before the inauguration in January. Actually, officially speaking, nothing counts until then. But mathematically speaking, you can already tell now that Trump has won.
Yeah, that's what I heard.
So because she can't, I mean, I don't think there's any chance now that Kamala Harris can sort of find votes anywhere that could allow her to win. So mathematically speaking, we know that Trump has won, but legally speaking, it happens when the Electoral College votes him in January, I guess.
Right.
Beginning of January. So yeah, Trump is the 47th president of the United States.
I'm curious to find out is Vietnam. We don't want to get too political, but is Vietnam Trump fans? Or are they the Vits here? They love him. So
Yeah, like I think Vietnamese people in general, like when Trump was in the office, I think like 4 years ago, right? Like Vietnamese people was actually like happy about it that Trump won the election that year. Just because that, we don't like the Chinese. And, when Trump was there, like there was a lot of the thing between America and China. But economic wise, I feel like I saw a video today and this lawyer was talking about, it would be better if Kamala wins, right? Because for us, because Trump is like very big on tax, and the thing with us importing goods from China, and then we also exporting goods to America, so that just create like some sort of like complications over there. But yeah, like in general, well, we're definitely like interested in this election as well, right? Because I think this year there's so many things happen, like politics, but also like in some U.S. society as well, right? So a lot of people are like super interested in this election. And then they spend a lot of money on social media and all this thing for the election, so we just see it everywhere. So
it's probably an understatement to say this is the most watched, most I don't want to say ambitious, but it's the most interesting election of my lifetime, without a doubt. When you got the world's richest man coming to the side of the president and endorsing him all over Twitter and so forth, and you got the biggest podcaster, and Joe Rogan and so forth coming on board, and it says quite a lot, because again, not to get too political, but Joe Rogan has not in his history, he hasn't always been a Trump fan, and you got a lot of these right. He's actually been very critical of Trump, so I find it's very, very fascinating.
Maybe could you start? I mean, we know about you obviously, but the listener doesn't. So could you start telling us a little bit about yourself, where you come from, your background, and what it is that you do, who you are?
Yeah. So my background is that I was supposed to be a hotelier. And then I worked in the hotel industry for like a couple of years in Dubai. And then I slowly made my transition into doing operation remotely. That was when the pandemic happened, I think in 2020. So I officially moved into remote operations since 2020, and I've started working with education tech, ad tech startups since then. And I've been working with companies from the US and Singapore, and then also Europe. My current company, there's not like a specific location. So our team is just like all over the place. So I can also say that I have been working with people from all over the places around the world for what you call since 2018. So that's 6 years, 6, 7 years already. So yeah, I'm currently based in Vietnam, and my expertise background heavily lies in operations. Obviously, it was a different kind of operation back then when I worked in hotel. But right now, I'm doing operation customer service. I tap into a little bit of sales for remote startup.
Right.
Can you, so you've been around, I mean, you've been doing this for six years now. So in 2018, was there such a thing as a remote remote work community in Vietnam?
I reckon that there was, but then again, it's not something like popular because at that, maybe because I was in a completely different context, different industry. Because hotel industry, it's just heavily like in person, right? It's a service industry, so maybe I wasn't aware of. But I know that remote work has been here since ages, right? And then because of the pandemic, it's just, I don't know, gone up and then got known by a lot of people because it was a way for everyone to earn a living at that point.
Yeah, right. I remember in 2016, sorry to interrupt you. When I was living in Vietnam, remote work was it was around, but it wasn't a big thing. I knew maybe a couple of friends who were doing remote work in Vietnam, but still the vast majority were working in the traditional office environment. And so when you were out doing remote work in 2018, was there a community for you to be to connect with and share insight and share resources? I guess that would be a good way to lead into how you started the community that you're growing now. That I think last time I checked was close to 7,000 members right now.
Yeah. So we do have this Digital Nomads Vietnam Facebook group. We are at 6.7 thousand members. Well, we keep it as a private group because we don't want it to be something public. And, when you're in Facebook and you search for like digital nomads or remote work, you see so many groups, right? And then the thing is that you don't find like values in those groups, at least for when I was like tapping into remote work in like when I moved back to Vietnam. So yes, when I first made my transition, I think most of the knowledge, most of the resources that I could get are like from community abroad. So there wasn't exactly like, okay, an Asian community for remote work or, a Vietnam community for people working remotely. Because at that time, I believe that most of the people working remotely are in tech field. So basically, they're a software developer that they got like employed from foreign companies, but it's not something that very popular. So pretty much everything that I got are like from people people from the US, right? And people from Europe. So those resources. And then I start looking for gigs, like internships, job with like startups abroad. So that's when I actually then I got to know better, like how to work remotely with foreign companies. And I just learn on the go and get to know, the environment, the working style, like better along the way. Like honestly, like sometimes I wish that I met someone at that stage that they would be like, okay, this is this, or I have a place or a community where I'm like, okay, the information here is so valuable, trusted, that I can just be there and use it. But now I think it's getting better. There's a lot of communities now, right? And a lot of, like, for example, like Vietnam, I feel like the VA community is getting really big, right? It's increasing. Like a lot of people are working remotely as an VA. And then also like even sales, I met some sales representatives that they work remotely from Vietnam because a lot of company would be like tapping into the Vietnamese market, right? And they need salespeople for sure. So there's a lot more now, and we see a lot of communities, but at the same time, which information is true, which of information is the one that you can use, the one that you can trust, right? Because now we have information everywhere. We can get it like anywhere in social media, internet, like just everywhere, right? And I think that's also the reason why I started the Digital Nomads Vietnam Facebook group, because I wanted to be like a, well, not only me, but I started with another Vietnamese girl. She's in marketing. She has her own agency. So we started it together, and we wanted to be a safe place for people who are working remotely from Vietnam can just connect to each other and, networking and just find a community for themselves.
What's
So
oops, sorry, go ahead, Alex.
yeah, so I just wanted to ask in relations to that, now that we talk about the digital nomads Vietnam, what in your experience are the greatest challenges that remote Vietnamese workers meet? So if you help people, you create this safe space for them, and a space where that people can share experiences, people can learn from each other. So based on the experience that you have gathered from doing this, what are the biggest challenges and how do people solve them?
I think the biggest one I can see is that people think about remote work or working remotely with company means doing a quick online work that they can just earn like quick money on the go. I think that is one of the biggest one, even with freelancing, right? Freelancing has been here like for a long time, and a lot of people in Vietnam freelance. But at the same time, we have a lot of people still think about working remotely means that you would do these, for example, like what kind of job, like transcribe kind of job that you earn little bit, and then it's still, let's say, an extra income for them on top of their actual job. So they don't the problem, not like the problem here is that, okay, how do we help people see that, okay, working remotely doesn't mean that it's a quick way to get money. It's a quick fix for what they are dealing with, right? Like they can work remotely full time, right? Because that is possible, right? So how people shift from that mindset, because it's one thing that they do gig work, right? And it's a different thing when they prepare the application and prepare for the whole hiring process for a full-time position, right? And only because I see a lot of people, they ask me even on the group is one thing, but at the same time on my TikTok, they ask like, okay, is it easy to get remote work, right? Like, or if they don't have any experience, can they just do remote work? Or some people think that remote work is an actual job, right? So there's still a lot of like misunderstanding around this, right? And a lot of people would also think that, okay, remote work means freelancing, right? It's yes and no. Like remote work can, what we're trying to do here is that we focus on the full-time position, remote positions, right, for Vietnamese talent. At the same time, a lot of people think that, okay, they can just do freelance. That means that it's just an extra income, a side hustle, right? But freelancing remotely, it's like a different story, right? It's like, okay, now you have to do you find your own clients, you're running your own business here, right? It's a one person company. So it's also a different aspect to it, right? So okay, if you want to do full time, how are you going to get your application done? How are you going to get the interview prepared? Just exactly the same like you apply for an in-person job, but now it's remotely. So what other skills, what do you need, the knowledge that they need to apply into their application, right? That is when people need to be like, okay, this is real. This is something that, we do for real, not just a quick money thing. So yeah, so that is where I find a little bit challenging, because changing people mindset or perspective or something is not like an easy it's not happening overnight. So yeah.
So yeah, I mean, so just to tap a bit into that, and you mentioned some of it with regards to skills here in the end. So I also want to ask, just as we would like to know what does your experience tell you about the challenges, what does your experience tell you about the type of skills people need? In other words, what are the most important skills for remote workers in general, or what are the types of skills that you find that people lack the most, maybe?
Yeah, I think the biggest one for me has always been communications, because clearly when you work remotely, communication is a big thing, and it's not the same as when you work in person. Right. And it's not only about face-to-face communications, it's also how you deliver what you're trying to say in your writing. Right. And sometimes, not sometimes, all the time, you will be working different hours with your team. So maybe they're not going to be online when you're already offline. So, and then there's an issue. So how are you communicating that issue to them, that when they're online, they can just work on the fix right away without waiting for you? So asynchronous communications, I think it's very important for people who want to go working remotely. And then at the same time, because we all know about the language barriers, right? That is something that people need to work on with communications, because sometimes it's not easy for us to express what we want to say in English, but then that requires practice. And I think that is important. And then the second one I think is also important is that people just need to be tech savvy, not in the way that they have to know how to code or they have to, I don't know, fix the bugs or anything. It's like how they can learn softwares, how they can learn tools, right? Because operations, like at least from my end, operation when working remotely, we rely a lot on softwares and tools, right? All these automations and workflows that we can create, that is going to help a remote team run, right? Of course, we can do everything manually. We can set up calls. We could just hop on calls, but that's not effective. So at least for operations, how you use the software, the tools that you have right now, AI, right? How you use those to help teams operate remotely smoothly. That is gonna be important for anyone in operations.
Would you say that now that you talk about technology and software, would you say that the rise of AI has made something like the language barrier smaller? Is it easier to jump into being a remote worker after what do you call it, the AI revolution has begun?
I say yes and no. Yes, in a way that you now have the tool, just to do a quick, easy translation for you, right? But at the same time, there are so many things that, okay, in your mind, it's one thing, but when you put out into words, that's a different thing. And when it goes through translation, it becomes a different thing, right? So miscommunication, misunderstanding can happen there, right? I actually have this at my current place. We had this team member that he used AI just to go back and forth every single time we want to discuss an issue, or something, and it didn't work out, right? So you have the tool, but at the same time you have to own it as well. You cannot rely on it like 100%, right? You have it translate for you, but at the same time, you have to understand exactly what you want to deliver here. So that's why my answer is yes and no. I mean, like, I think it's also apply to other aspects, right? A lot of people think that AI would just take over our jobs, right? So that is like, there's an aspect, right? Obviously, when working remotely, when we have AI, it can make our job easier. But at the same time, like all the ideas, all these like critical thinking behind problem solving behind it, it's still going to be human. It's still going to be us who make the decision here, right? So
you don't
yeah,
think
that's my
you don't think AI will steal the jobs from all aspiring remote workers, Vietnamese remote workers in the upcoming future?
I don't think that I don't think it's gonna steal our job. I think it's gonna make our job better. And with the thing with AI is that there's so many jobs will be combined together. Not jobs, tasks, right?
Mm.
There's so many tasks that can be combined together, but at the same time, that means company will require more skills, right? For example, VA, virtual assistant. No longer you no longer need a virtual assistant who can help you schedule meetings, right? Like nowadays you need a virtual assistant, like company look for someone who knows social media, someone who can do automation, someone who can even do like writing or like copywriting, or even like set up like AI prompt, right? So
Mm.
that's what I
Mm.
mean, right? We will have so many tasks combined, but at the same time the requirements will be higher, like more specific, right? Is that a word that I use? But yes, that's what I mean.
All right. So last question, on, and then I'll throw it over to you if you have any questions. So based on the challenges, based on the skills, based on what we talked about now with AI. So your group, Digital Nomads Vietnam, how do you, knowing these challenges, knowing these important skills, how do you support aspiring remote workers? What is it exactly that you do that help people that want to jump into this career?
Yeah, so right now what we're doing is that we are doing webinars that can help people get the knowledge, right, to tap into remote jobs, like how to find remote jobs and how to make transition into getting a remote job, right? A lot of people don't really know what they can do with their existing skills. So that's what we want to be, that's where we want to be. So how do we direct people in the right path where they can actually, because a lot of this information is online, but people often lack a research skills, right? So, okay, how are we helping them to excel in their researching skills to be able to get the remote job that they are looking for? So that's where we want to come in. We also want to be a networking place for people who are already working remotely, because we think that's how people can learn from each other, right? People can just connect to each other. And a lot of people also work 2, 3 jobs, like they have side hustle and they all work remotely. So how can we connect them together? So just create a community where they can support each other.
All right.
Going back to what you said earlier, I thought it very fascinating. Chad, you mentioned that the VAs that are competitive, you didn't say that, but what I got out of it is the VAs that are able to find work, they are able to do multiple tasks and use AI in a way that makes it more efficient and seamless. So it seems like besides what traditionally a VA would do was, you mentioned the scheduling of meetings. Now they need to understand how to use automation tools and to build workflows and efficiencies for a company. Is that a growing thing where VAs now are tasked with these new roles within their job requirements? You find that to be pretty much across the board. But now you got to come on in and you got to play the role also maybe of sales, right, or sales support, and the different roles. So I mean, that wouldn't make sense to me, because as companies are looking to cut costs, obviously hiring remote, but how do they maximize that remote individual by asking them to become maybe not an expert, but proficient in multiple areas, including doing being able to hop on a sales call or sales support or following up with a sales inquiry. Are you finding that something that the Vietnamese VAs that are in your group are up to task for? they're doing well with now embracing this new reality of what's required to be, again, because the world is so much smaller now with the rise of AI and technologies. That means you can work for somebody in multiple countries around the world, but it also means that it's more competitive. Everybody is now fighting for that one piece of the pie. Do you find that to be the case?
Yeah, I think it's absolutely the case. I don't see VA being VA anymore. I see VA just being operations manager, right? Because, like I said, like AI combined with the AI revolution, it combines a lot of tasks, right? And like you said, companies now trying their best to cut costs. One of the reason I feel like company going remote is also to cut costs, right? Like when going remotely, you cut a lot of costs, like all these office renting and everything. Like you can just save some money. So yeah, I think like, and from the years that I've been working with these startups, I could feel, I could see that they would hire someone that will have like a multiple skill set instead of just like a single skill set. So the Vietnamese VA market, I believe that they're up there. But the thing is like there still need to be some sort of instruction to get them into that direction, how they can upskill themselves, right? To leverage and to stand out in the market. Like I don't target, like I'm not into like VA specifically, but from what I have seen with companies that I work with, people often look for VA who got really good marketing skills like social media and even copywriting, right? And right now, I do see that Vietnamese VA have those skills, but at the same time, other market can offer the same thing, right? I think someone's already mentioned this, but we could clearly see that because I think in VA customer service, the Philippines is a very strong market.
Yeah.
So, okay. But at the same time, like Vietnamese people are known for really good skills in marketing and media, right? So how do they use that so that they can stand out from the Philippines, right? And at the same time, we also have other countries coming up. A lot of countries like we do have a lot of I feel like we do have a lot of people in Thailand also, right? And I work with people from even like Uzbekistan. So these countries, they are coming up as well, right? Because there's still many companies from the US, from Europe are outsourcing their talent, and they will always need people at cheaper rate, but highly skilled. I'm not pro on we should get cheaper rate or cheaper pricing or cheaper salary or anything. I think we should be able to work and get similar benefits, suitable benefits for the skills and the experience we offer. So the skill and the experience is where we can leverage, right? So that's what I'm saying. How can we upskill so that we can just be stand out and leverage and just get the job when the market is very competitive?
You mentioned the things that VAs or freelancers in Vietnam need to do or need to be good at to be competitive. You mentioned communication being one of them, and the other one, knowing how to use the AI tools. Is there anything else that would empower remote talent from Vietnam to really stand above the crowd when compared to the up and coming people from Thailand and these other countries? What is your opinion in terms of the perfect VA from Vietnam that would easily win a job opportunity? What would that individual encompass in terms of skill sets?
I think we're already known for this, but I think we all know that Vietnamese people are so hardworking. I think that's one of our leverage. But yes, like communications and knowing how to use tools and software, I think those are the most important. I think another one is being proactive, right? More often especially for VA and operations. In general, people tend to be what do I say, waiting for instruction kind of. So throughout my
Mm.
years working, I think being proactive is what may help me gain that trust from company, right? That we are willing to not going the extra step, but more like we know what needs to be done and we execute those. Right. We don't wait for instruction. And as much as I would want to say that it's come natural, but it's a skill that it doesn't come natural at all. Like I feel like people need to understand it's a soft skill. So sometimes it sounds very like what you call vague and hard to understand. But then when I feel like when you work with, especially foreign companies, right, the more proactive, like the better, and also they would put more trust in you because working remotely, it's also means that employers gonna not gonna trust you that soon and that easy, right?
I also would think that not working, I'm sorry, from working remotely, you're not eyeball to eyeball every day with them. And so there's a saying, in America, out of sight, out of mind. And if you're
Yeah.
not constantly promoting yourself, right? I mean, here's an idea for us, actually. Maybe we can partner up one day and do a workshop on ABC, always be promoting. And in this scenario, promoting yourself, because culturally, we both know that the Vietnamese people tend to be very passive, and they don't want to stand out, and they don't want to they don't want to
Yep.
be, they want to just do their job and not be a nuisance to other people. But in remote work, I can see how that can be a big disadvantage and could work against you actually if you're not
Yep.
finding ways to stand out, especially if you're competing with people who are they may have other tasks or roles in the company, but they're actually in a physical office and they see their managers daily, and so they're top of mind. And if you're just that one person that is doing a very specific task, but you're never really around, then it's hard to make an impression and be that person who's next in line for a promotion if you're not. And also, I think you were exact when you say you got to be more proactive and looking for problems and bringing to the table solutions to the problem. It's just instead of just
Yep.
being here's a task and go do it, which is
Exactly.
probably more the mindset of most Vietnamese employees.
And this is
Yeah.
something
I
that,
think
I mean, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
no, go ahead. Go ahead.
I just wanted to mention real quick, this is something that we are working with ourselves, right? Because we're getting requests from employers who want to hire Vietnamese, right? And then they ask us, can you find these people for us? And one of the things that we've been asking our own community for is to, send us videos where they introduce themselves, 30 seconds, 1 minute, whatever, right? And I think one of the reasons why it takes people some time to sort of get around to doing this is because of this in a sense, very respectful, to some extent, very humble nature of a culture of the Vietnamese people. And I think especially the Vietnamese need to be aware that, many people have all the skills, they have all the ambition, they are the most hardworking people, most disciplined people in the world. But when you're dealing with Scandinavian companies that I know myself personally, but Western companies in general, they're like, come on, tell me what do you got, what do you want, what can you do? They don't care for people hiding, right? They want people to come out and tell them to their face where they can create value. So I think this is also something that, just as Anlam mentioned before, something where we could really help a lot of people if we were to provide them with a little more knowledge, little more capability when it comes to promoting oneself and getting into the face of these employers and telling them, where can I create value for you, right? Because we have to remember that one thing we can say about the Indians or the Philippines or the Indonesians is that they have been connected to Western employers, for especially the Indians, for longer time than the Vietnamese. So they have just gotten used to, I think, to a larger extent, to talking to Western employers in the way that Western employers want to be talked to. And I think we gotta make sure that Vietnamese talent sort of gets this as well. right? You need to be brave enough to tell these employers how you can create value.
Yeah, I think this is where the confidence that American has, right? Like they are just so like some people can be overconfident that we think they're cocky, but at the same time in work environment, especially for remote work, I think that will be an advantage. And more often, like I know the culture play a big part in this, but at the same time, it's a learnable skill, right? Everyone can learn it, right? It's not like, again, it's not going to happen overnight, but at the same time, if you keep practicing every single day, it's going to work, right? And the thing from the years that I work with Western companies, right? We just need to say it out loud. Like there's no room for like, okay, let's not say it, and then they might guess it, or we just wait for them to say it. No, so it means that if you don't understand anything, you say it. You say it right away. Like, hey, I don't understand it, because a lot of people, it's also a language barrier thing, right? A lot of Vietnamese people, they have the talents, but they're not confident in their language skill, right? Because we think we have to say it perfect grammar, we have to say it in a perfect accent, but it's not always the case. It's what you deliver, right? And because in the work environment, if you don't understand your team members say, right, it doesn't help. So if you don't understand anything, you say it out loud. If you want to touch on like an issue and you have an opinion about it, you say it out loud, right? There's no room for waiting and guessing. It's very straightforward when working remotely. That's what I'm saying. Maybe in office, sometimes you can be like, okay, because sometimes it's also a political game in the office, right? But working remotely, you just have to be super straightforward to get things done and not waste your time or other people's time. So yeah, like I feel like that is something that we lack of, and definitely the Vietnamese talents we need to work on. Like in the beginning, I was like that because it's a culture thing, right? We have a saying in Vietnamese that it's better that like when we shut our mouth instead of like trying to argue, so that we don't get into like a big argument. But but yeah, when working it is not always that case, so we just need to get that one out of our head and just continue to practice every single day, and it's gonna feel natural.
Agree. I got a question that I wanted to follow up with. What trends do you see emerging in the freelancing and remote work space, but particularly for Vietnamese freelancers?
Ooh, freelancing. Honestly, I've been thinking that if anything that you can do with AI, it's gonna be for now and in the next few years, right? Because every business that I know, even the business that I've worked with before, they have or are looking to implement AI into their technology or their daily operational flow. So I think definitely like anything AI related. I feel like past jobs like VA or operational customer service, there's still going to be demand, right? Everyone needs someone to help with data entry, right? And these tasks that time consuming, so there's always need for that. But at the same time, okay, how are you gonna leverage AI and the current technology to help that like become more efficient, effective, faster, something like that? That would be on demand. And then what else? I mean, you can just freelance pretty much on anything, right? Data analytics. So just pretty much literally everything. But going forward in the next couple of years, I think AI is still going to be something very trendy and pop.
So yeah, I mean, do you feel like I have a couple of questions, but especially related to skills. I think so. All of the skills that we've been talking to now, you say yourself, you can freelance on pretty much anything, and we talked about communication skills and and soft skills in general. Do you think there is anywhere that people can go right now, like a central hub or whatever for remote workers, for freelancers, for VAs, where they can sort of get, where they can acquire these skills? So not cherry picking from a million different locations, but one place where they can go. Is that something that you have found, that exists, or is it something that you looking at the pool of talented remote workers in Vietnam right now? Is it something that you're saying this is actually something that we need to create this, or we need to find it somewhere?
Yeah, I haven't come across any, especially like a central where you can learn literally like every single skills. So I feel like every business or community, they have their own niche, right? So that's why we haven't seen any like a central hub. And then at the same time, a lot of these that require you to be like, okay, a lot of practicing on your own, right? A lot of these skills. And even with freelancing to me, it's always like doing your own business. So how are you going to get your own client? That is it's a process, right? So again, I haven't come across anything. If we have something like that, I think that'd be great, right? If we have, even for Upwork, I feel like Upwork is definitely like their way. It's like a one-stop shop for like freelancing, right? They have like all these gigs and everything. But even for that, I think it's good. But at the same time, people need various resources, right? To consider. It's not like, okay, you're gonna study at one university and that's it. You're not gonna get knowledge from anywhere outside. And it's also important that you get knowledge and experience from people who have been there since forever, right? With like a decade of experience or something like that. So I think I would love to have like a central hub like that, but at the same time, I don't know if that would be the only place that I would go. So maybe that's the way I put it.
All right.
Go ahead, Alex.
No, fire away on. I was done. Just reaching for my coffee.
Yeah. I was speaking with a couple of people earlier today who have been working in an office environment, one for 15 years, other for around 8. And they're very curious about the world of remote work and freelancing. They're people with families, and so young kids, and the idea of remote work is obviously very attractive and interesting to them. What advice would you give to somebody who's looking to not tinker, but get more involved and maybe even make a complete transition into freelance or remote work, and not just a guy coming out of college, but the person who is been in the job force for a number of years and just wants to change and maybe some more control over their whole life work balance kind of situation.
Yeah, I think this is what we touched on earlier. That is how they promote themselves. Because often, right, they spend so many years working in the office and they don't really like have a social media presence or anything. It doesn't have to be you work in marketing, you work in media design, that you need a portfolio or social media account, or but even if let's say you're passionate about something, for example, I want to be like an advocate for remote work, right? So I built my social media presence around that. So it's something how you promote yourself, like use the skill that you already have and combine it with the topic that you're so passionate about, right? If you're passionate about edtech, right, you build a social media presence around that, right? Because nowadays it's not only a CV, and those people, they are millennials, they are boomers, right? We are previous generation, and now we are competing with Gen
Z, right?
Gen Z, yeah. Sorry, I forgot for a second. But they are now competing with those, and those are digital natives, right? They are born knowing software, and they can learn technology so fast, right? So build that. And the thing is with boomers and millennials, that they already have a network, right? They work in the industry for so many years, right? Together with the the social media it doesn't have to be Instagram, like posting pictures or anything, but I feel like even if you have like a solid LinkedIn profile, like it happened to me when I didn't use LinkedIn before at all, but when I start like sharing more about remote work, and how teams can and people can start remote work, I got like job offers, right? I got like, okay, people look at it and see that, okay, this person is interesting. And even now, there's always be a cultural fit interview, right? And company look for people who would fit in their like company culturally. So it's not only you being able to do a job. So it's also, okay, who you are as a person.
Mm.
And again, are that person your characteristic? Do they fit the company, the team? So that's also what people look for. So I think that's something we definitely need to learn from the younger generation, just to have put us out there, right? Put yourself out there, because at the end of the day, you're selling yourself, your skills, and your experience. So
You
yeah.
you mentioned something that was quite interesting, and it got me thinking right away. That the older generation, they might not have grown up with AI or programming, and they're not so comfortable with moving around the technology. However, they got this network that they've built up for a decade, and also they portray a different image. Now, I remember years ago, I went in for a job interview. The only one time in my life I went in for a job interview, and I thought I did well. I aced the interview. Found out a day later that I wasn't accepted, and when I just inquired as to why, because I wanted to get some experience, maybe improve upon my interview, the answer was actually quite funny. The person that interviewed after me, similar in terms of skill sets and everything. I was a little bit, I had better skills in certain areas. But the number one reason why, I think they were very honest in sharing it with me, the reason why they declined my application was the other person had a family, had children. And to them, that meant that person likely, probability wise, was going to be more dependable. And so being older, not necessarily is a disadvantage, and I know that a lot of times in the past, when I went to hire somebody or somebody came in at a previous business that I ran, I'd like people who had families, because I know they were very disciplined and needed to put money on the table and pay the rent and buy food and groceries and so forth. So I think it's important to note that there's good and bad, right? It's great if you were younger, but it's not a bad thing to be older, and you leverage what you got. If your network is strong, then tap into that network to help you get the word out.
Yeah.
Or tap into the network and find people who might be great at social media. They can teach you. And also stress, in a job interview that, you are a family person, because it doesn't hurt to stress that part. You promote what you got, right?
Exactly. Like that's what I say. Like sometimes it's okay to get personal, right? Like sometimes we think that job interview is just like formal and okay, all these technical questions. But the thing is now is there's always be the cultural interview first. So it's okay to get personal on those interviews, right? And you can share more about your hobbies, because again, like if a team full of like nature lovers, right? Like hiker, trekkers, or I don't know, like diver, very sporty, and then you come in, right? And you don't really play any sport, people will question that, oh, are you gonna fit in? And that is the fact. So it doesn't hurt for you to share, and it's also good for the candidate, right? Because at the end of the day, when you work remote, you don't connect to people in the same way that you connect people in the office, right? So sometimes it's always good to have some sort of like similar hobbies or interests, so that okay, you can get better like know or engage or connected to each other. So it doesn't hurt to share those, and it's good that for the candidate to know that okay, is that the team that I want to be, right? A lot of people would be like, oh, I'm just in here, whatever it is. But at the same time, if you work full time, it's better to be in the place that you like a little, rather than.
Yeah, I mean, it's I think it's great that you say it, and I don't think we've been talking that much about that in earlier episodes. But this is very, very true, and especially I've worked for several Danish companies and also different types of institutions, and it is very common in Scandinavia in general that if you go to a job interview, then maybe the beginning of the interview there'll be a bit of what did you do before, what kind of skills do you have, but then it's very common that at some point the recruiter is gonna basically just put down his or her notebook and then say, okay, let's talk about you. What kind of hobbies do you have? Who are you as a person? What do you do in your spare time? And because work culture, work environment, all that stuff is very important for Western employers, and it's becoming increasingly important. So I think it's really great that you mentioned that people should literally, if they prepare for a job interview, I think especially with Scandinavian companies that I know well myself, they should literally, apart from preparing to talk about their skills, they should literally prepare to talk about themselves, like almost prepare a little casual presentation about who they are, and because they will almost certainly be, if not asked about it, then at least they'll be expected to mention something about themselves. So yeah, really a great point there.
Yeah, and put those things, just put it out there, like put on social media. That's the thing. When people look at it, people see you as a person, not just someone that, okay, like a Robert that gonna be like, oh, I can do this, I can do that, and I will complete the task for you. So people like I don't see people needing that anymore, right? Because again, they're gonna get AI to do that. Right.
Exactly.
But
Exactly.
it's the personal touch, it's the mindset, it's the perspective, right? If you want to get political, like be it, right? It's who you are. If you want to talk about like a certain aspect, if you want to talk about this community event or this like organization that you're so passionate about, like do that, right? Share on your social media so people see you as who you are, instead of like just
Yeah, again, great point. And again, you also mentioned political. I mean, that's also a trend in, with many Western employers, both in the US and in Scandinavia. If you go back 10, 20 years, it would be, unheard of that a company takes a political stance on some issue, right? They will all try to remain neutral to reach as wide a consumer base as possible. It's becoming increasingly normal that companies, they almost engage in activist behavior, on different political issues that we don't have to discuss here. But so activism in companies are becoming more normal. So again, I agree with you. People shouldn't be afraid of, maybe there are certain views, if they have them, they shouldn't advertise them. But on other aspects, don't be afraid to throw a little bit of feminism in there or something like that, if that's what you believe in, right? Because Western employers are not afraid of that anymore, right? They might even engage with it and find it positive because it shows them that you are energetic, or that you have a mind and a spirit of your own, right? Because you're absolutely true. If a Danish company contacts you, goes to our website, for instance, VietAssist, or contacts one of your community members and gives them a job opportunity, they've already chosen that they're not going to use a robot, because otherwise they would have just used a robot or gotten one of their software engineers to engineer an AI to do it, right? So double down on being human rather than pretend to be a machine. I think that's a great piece of advice.
There's a sorry, go ahead.
Now, I just want to say that it's also good for the candidates, that because they know that like if they want to be at that company, like if they align, right? So that's also help candidates to choose company, to vet companies, because at the end of the day, it doesn't work if you do 100, application to any companies. It doesn't work like that. It's better for you to just niche down and I like what's you call target the right one. So that's what I wanted to say.
Perfect. I mean, I wanted to add on to our conversation a moment ago. I think Alex and I had talked about this in another podcast, I believe. As much as AI is hot and it's being discussed everywhere, there's also always a counter movement, right? There's this AI movement out there, where a lot of companies and people they don't want to deal with a robot. They want to deal with somebody who has opinions and has some transparency and a different perspective, a different viewpoint. And I think for Vietnamese people, culturally, if they can work on that and just be more open, share unique things about their life, it just makes them more human. And I think part of winning a job and part of staying relatable to people that you're going to be working with is just, sometimes you got to put the guard down, just open up and just be yourself. It's kind of hard for people to. It sounds kind of it sounds basic, right? Be yourself. What is that supposed to mean, right? It just means sometimes it's okay to speak up, to say something that might potentially rub somebody the wrong way. But it's okay. We can agree to disagree, as they say. And I think again, I grew up in America, and I always had a hard time when I was interacting with my Vietnamese family who had either just come over or when I lived in Vietnam, where it is such two polar opposites sometimes in the culture, right? When Americans can be seen sometimes as being too open, and then you have the Vietnamese who are very, very careful and cherry pick words sometimes because of potentially offending somebody else. And I think when you are serious about finding remote work, you're going to have to understand there's going to be some type of culture that you will have to embrace, understand. Doesn't mean you have to believe in everything about that culture, but you have to adjust somewhat the way you interact so that you can blend in and, again, culturally fit. There's a good culture fit. Culture fit is a thing I've been hearing a lot in some of the podcasts that we've done, and how that's important in Western employers. When they are hiring you, they want to find the person with the skill set, but almost equally important is that person a good fit for the rest of the team members that they're going to be working on a daily basis with.
Absolutely. And I think it was said earlier that, we talked about pay and, getting paid for what your skills are. And, it's, I don't remember who said it, Lam, maybe you remember, but we talked at some point, and one of us said that, it's, your number one skill you should have is to be able to talk about your other skills, right? So because one thing is having the skills that would allow you to get the what do you call this, the salary level that you want, but it's not enough to have the skills. I mean, we all know this. It's obvious, but then again, as you say, you need to train it. You need to be able to formulate what you can do and what value you can create, because in the end, an employer pays you for value, right? So the better you are at formulating value, the more obvious it will seem to a rational employer that he should pay you the salary that you are asking for, right? You can have all the skills you want in the world. If you can't formulate it, an employer will give you a lower salary than you want, no matter what. So absolutely. So I think it always comes back to communication, I think, when we have these discussions. Yeah. So actually, I want to say, An Lam, do you have more questions? Because I think we are slowly running out of time.
I think we covered a lot today, and I really appreciate your input today. There's a couple of things that both Alex and I can speak for myself, definitely. I've heard that we didn't think about before. And it's new to us, so I really appreciate it. And I think the listeners will also appreciate some of your perspective and knowledge. If people want to find you, well, of course, we'll leave it in the footnotes of the video, but where is it easiest for somebody to connect with you?
Yes, so they can find me on TikTok. My handle is My Inner Creator. And then they can also join the Digital Nomads Vietnam Facebook group. And yes, they can just connect with me over there. But yeah, it was lovely talking with you guys. I think it was a really interesting talk, right? So yeah.
Yeah, well, we got to do this again first, and second of all, we have to find something that we can collaborate on.
Absolutely.
And it kind of, I got a feeling that something related to communication probably will be the.
No, I mean,
Yeah,
we're all trying to do the same thing. I just want to add to what Lam said. We're all trying to do the same thing. I mean, we can tell you in one word what we're doing, right? We always just look how to create value. We're not generally asking for anything in return, and we're doing it completely out in the open, right? So there's no hidden agenda with us, which is also the reason why we're gonna put all of your details onto our community, and we're gonna tell people, if you find this valuable, go and visit this page and become a member of this community. So it looks kind of to us like that's what you are doing as well, trying to create value, trying to help people get where they want to go, and I think based on that sort of shared intention, I think there's a lot of great work that we could do together, collaborating.
yeah. I think I'm the same. I think like because the word is an open book, right? Literally you can find anything anywhere. So the more values we can bring to people, because at the end of the day we're helping people.
Yeah,
So the more values that we can bring to them, the better, right? So and no gatekeeping. Like there's no point of like gatekeeping at all. But yeah, like I appreciate it, and yeah, I look forward to any future collaborations. I think it's gonna be great. But yeah, you can just let me know anytime. But yes, excited for that.
Yeah,
cool, great.
I was saying we, but I'll speak for myself. I had a great time. Appreciate you and
Oh,
what you
thank
do
you.
for the digital nomads in Vietnam. You know, like you, right? I love Vietnam. I love my country, and I take a lot of joy
Vietnam
in
is
the things we
great.
do.
Vietnam
Vietnam,
is great.
it's coming up, man, and the world needs to know, Vietnam is the place to
Exactly.
be, right?
Yeah,
But
people are putting a lot of money in this country, right? And
That's for sure.
a lot of Vietkill, they are coming back as well, right? Because I
yeah,
feel like they're looking to connect to their roots, like, their origin. But at the same time, there's a lot more opportunities over here, right? Compared to the West. But I feel like that's another that can be another topic. That's another a
yeah.
discussion.
Absolutely.
And I want to kind of
But
say this real quick before we run out of time. A lot of people probably wonder, it's a podcast for Vietnamese, job seekers. Why is this white guy Alex? Why is he always in his videos? And we shared this at the beginning of the podcast. But for those who don't, for those of you in the community who don't know, Alex is not only my co-founder, he's also my brother-in-law. He's married to my wife's younger sister, and my wife is actually half Vietnamese and half Scandinavian. Her father's Vietnamese and her mother's Scandinavian. So Alex, having a 1-year-old, he's got a vested interest in Vietnam and a vested interest in seeing Vietnam boom. Because I'm sure he's of the mindset that if he can empower the community, help Vietnam prosper, that only helps his son one day. As Alex Jr. I don't want to call him Alex Jr. He's actually, I don't want to say his name. Alex Jr. one day takes over the realm of the family empire and makes his way into Vietnam. And the more Alex can do and I can do and then you also try to get Vietnam moving and growing and prospering, the better for everybody connected to Vietnam. So,
Absolutely.
yeah,
You said it, Lam. You said it all.
yeah.
I think it doesn't matter where you come from, like whether you're like this your skin color or your whatever, it doesn't matter. Like I think what matter is that okay, what is our purpose in this, right? Like what we want to bring to people, right? Because at the end of the day, it's a community that we are giving back, right? So since we are giving back, because we already have it, like I don't want to say that. I think in a way that we have been experiencing, we have the resources that they need, right? So now it's time for us to give back. So it's more about that rather than focusing on us, like okay, who we are, like where we come from, or like are you authentic Vietnamese? Are you like I'm Vietnamese, or are you like Vietnamese abroad? So it doesn't matter in that way. So it's more about okay, the values you bring into the community. So
Absolutely.
yeah, but But that's nice, Alex. Like I don't know that you're also connected to this country.
Yeah, you could say that I'm literally in love with Vietnam, right? So yeah, 100%. I'm hoping, over the next couple of years, building what we're building and attracting a lot more people, creating much more value. I'm hoping that during the next couple of years that we can end up having some kind of constellation where we spend some months every year in Vietnam. So that would be absolutely awesome, and in that case, we might also be able to do some what do you call it, offline events, physical events together
In
Yeah.
real life, in real
in
life.
real life events. Yeah,
IRL.
Yeah.
IRL events.
Sweet. Alrighty. That's awesome. Thanks, guys.
All right, thank you
All
so
right.
much for taking an hour out of your life to have this conversation with us. And
No worries. I enjoy it. So that's absolutely my pleasure.
great. So that being said, see you guys around. See you around.
See you,
Bye.
chat.
Bye.
Bye bye.